Hello and welcome to this webinar all about real food and the benefits of eating it. So I'm going to start by introducing myself. I'm Mel and I'm the mother of two teenagers. I'm a slight science geek. I'm very bad at small talk because I'm so passionate about health and teaching about the connection between diet and lifestyle and how well you feel. I love to empower my clients and help you to find the best solutions for you by looking at the head bit and the body bit together. I'm on my own journey towards a better relationship with myself and my food. And my favourite things to do include talking to like-minded people, finding out new stuff, spreading the word about how important diet and lifestyle is to just making you feel generally a lot better. And I love to mess around on the water in boats and be outside as much as possible. So let me tell you what you are about to learn over the next half an hour. I'm going to talk to you about what exactly real food is, because trying to cut through the confusing messages in today's world and today's food environment is much harder than you would think. So I say real food, but you could also look at it as food that's as unprocessed and as close to its real form as you possibly can get. I'm going to talk about why we should mainly be eating real food and how much difference that would make to our health just by doing that. I'm going to talk about the sorts of changes you'll see if you can do this and why it's such a hard thing to do. And then finally, where you should start and some top tips about how to start making those changes. So what is real food? Well, one of the ways you can identify something that's a real food is that it won't have any ingredients. So for example, if you look at a vegetable in its natural form, no ingredient list on that vegetable. Or if you buy a piece of fresh meat from your butcher, no ingredients, or some fresh fish or cheese also, and that's interesting because cheese is a processed food, but it shouldn't have any ingredients. It grew. So that's another great way when you're trying to work out and steer through all that confusing marketing and advertising that we see in the shops every day. It grew. It either grew in the ground or it grew on the ground from the ground. So, for example, here's a cow. And it should still be recognizable. So, there you are, you have a piece of meat. And another example that sort of often comes up is minced beef. Okay, again, no ingredients. It's processed, I suppose, if we're going to be really pedantic about it, but it's a common sense thing, I think. If you can see that it hasn't had lots of extra kind of chemicals and flavorings and preservatives added, many of which we really have no idea of the long-term effects on our bodies, then that is a good thing. More ideas on how to sort of recognize what's a real food. It will have grown here, maybe in a big polytunnel or a greenhouse or on the open land or in the sea, but not here. So, if you get a sense that something was made in a factory, then it's not a good idea. And I've put a picture here of bread because this is a really interesting thing to discuss quickly. And very often there is an argument about the fact that we've eaten bread for thousands of years as man. And what I would say to that is the bread that we eat today bears absolutely no resemblance whatsoever to the bread that we would have eaten thousands of years ago, none. And in fact, the Chorley wood method of making bread was developed I think about in the 1970s, maybe the 1960s. It takes about 20 minutes to make a loaf of bread from beginning to end now. It's full of nasty chemicals. Most of them don't have to be labelled, so it's very difficult to find out what sort of stuff is in there. And trust me, the stuff they're putting in most breads, unless you have got a lovely bakery close to you that makes fresh bread and you can have a conversation with them about what exactly they put in it, then I wouldn't eat bread. So it's a real jungle out there in terms of working out what foods are, going to be good for your body if you eat them, and which foods are not going to be good for your body. And I'm talking today mainly about health. I'm not talking specifically about weight loss or fat loss in this talk. I'm talking about overall general good health comes from eating real unprocessed foods. So you will see claims on foods that have been cleverly sort of come up with by the food industry in order to make you feel safer and happier about buying this sort of food. So one of them is natural. The term natural actually isn't very well policed. So they can use natural for all sorts of things. For example, if you ever see on an ingredients list the term natural flavorings, that is code for chemical bleep storm. I'm going to try not to swear on here. So it doesn't mean natural. It's a loophole. So natural, ignore natural. And a great example is here, this packet of crisps, Cheetos, and it says simply natural. My disclaimer with this is that actually this is these are American packages, a lot of this, and we do have stricter controls in this country than they do in the States, but we do definitely still suffer from these sorts of marketing advertising ploys to get us to buy these incredibly highly processed fake foods. So you want to avoid all of this and try to stop being taken in by the marketing claims. Another one, most of us know that protein is good for us. So the food industry have realized that. And so they have started to put protein on something like that. Okay, you get your protein from eggs and meat and fish and dairy products, and predominantly they are the foods where you'll get protein from. You can get protein from other foods, but it is much harder. So you definitely don't get protein or good sources of protein from chocolate bars, Special K cereal bars, or these, which are all highly processed, full of all sorts of ingredients that you would not find on the shelf in your kitchen, I can pretty much guarantee. Okay, so this next one, gluten-free. That was a fantastic bandwagon for the food industry, and it has allowed them to produce and invent and come up with all sorts of new foods, which actually, if you are eating gluten-free because you think that that's a way to be healthier, you are wrong. So you eat gluten-free processed foods, they're probably worse for you than if you actually ate its real counterpart. Now, gluten is another issue which I'm not really going to go into anymore today, but it's another claim which you want to avoid and ignore. Okay, here are some more examples of foods which are misleading. We traditionally have thought they're very good for us. So time and time again, I see looks of real shock and surprise on my clients' faces when I tell them that actually their big bowl of granola first thing in the morning really has very little in terms of goodness and nutrients, so things which are going to nourish and feed your body and give it the goodness and nutrients that it needs to work well on a minute by minute basis. There's a lot of stuff in a bowl of granola which your body doesn't need, and there is a lot of stuff missing that it does need. Okay, so granola is not a health food, and it is not a good way to start the day, and neither is muesli. Rice cakes, they are devoid of really anything useful. So another food which many of us think is healthy, but in actual fact is zero in terms of quality or goodness for our bodies. And here's a little bit of text that I thought was quite amusing because it's actually so true for so many of us. Cole has written, "The cool thing about air fryers is I can cook the most unhealthy foods I can find and pretend they're healthy now." So I like that when you put it there, because a lot of this is about pretending that foods are healthy that quite frankly really aren't, and this is why it's such a jungle and so confusing when you're trying to navigate through what's healthy and what's not. And that's why actually the easiest way to do that is to focus on real and unprocessed foods. Here are a few more claims which are quite misleading. So sugar-free. So you'll often find that it's just packed full of nasty sweeteners, which again are chemicals, and we don't have good data to show absolutely that they don't cause other problems with our health. And with many of the sweeteners, there are actually suspicions that perhaps they do cause problems with our health. 0 grams of trans fats. So just in case you don't know what a trans fat is, a trans fat is a molecularly altered fat. So, and why would they do that? The reason trans fats were first kind of developed was because they are a great way to increase the stability and shelf life of processed foods. So they make foods last much, much longer. And also they were originally used in margarines, because a trans fat is an oil which has been made into a fat that's now solid at room temperature. Okay, so normally the way that you would tell if a fat is saturated or unsaturated is a saturated fat is always solid at room temperature, unless you live in a very, very hot place, and an unsaturated fat is liquid at room temperature. So an oil and a fat like perhaps duck fat or dripping or butter or ghee or something like that, solid. So that's a saturated fat. Coconut oil in this country is always solid at room temperature. And something like olive oil, which is an unsaturated fat, is always liquid at room temperature. So, you know, if you are eating a margarine that's solid, made from olive oil, you should be asking yourself the question, why is it solid? What has been done to it? And then the problem for us eating this is we eat this stuff and our bodies don't really know what to do with it. You know, because it's been changed and it's not something that they recognize. And again, we don't know what the long-term effects of these sorts of things are, but we definitely know that trans fats are carcinogenic. They're cancer causing, which is why in this country they're actually now banned, but it's still a label that's used as a kind of it's healthy. And low fat, finally, low fat. If you are eating a low-fat product, the chances are that it's higher in sugar, because if you take the fat out of a product, it tastes rubbish. So what the food industry had to do was add the sugar, more sugar in, to get the palatability, the taste, to a place where actually we still want to eat it. Because guess what? If stuff tastes horrible, you don't go back and eat it again. And the food industry, that doesn't work for the food industry, because they need to sell their product to make money. So ignore the reduced fat labels, because again, it's kind of another way of saying chemical bleak storm. So why real food? Why am I talking about real food? Why am I recommending that you eat mainly real unprocessed food? Firstly, because it's a biologically appropriate diet for human beings. And when I say diet, I don't mean something that you go on for a reason, for an amount of time. I mean the way that you eat for good, always, for the rest of your life. It's what we were designed as human beings to eat. We were designed, made, evolved to eat food that grew, not to eat food that was developed by scientists in a factory. And at this point, I just want to say and recommend a fantastic book. So if any of you are listening to me now and thinking, wow, that's a bit over the top, you know, like designed and developed it by scientists, surely not. Oh yes, surely is. So a book that is really worth reading, or just like put it in the search box in YouTube, look up the book Hooked. It's absolutely fantastic, and it will blow your mind in terms of what you will learn. And if you want details about that, it will be on my website. There's a list of books that I recommend you read. So going to my website is always a great place to go, just to sort of get any more information, learn some more things about metabolic health and what I talk about in my practice. So in other words, biologically appropriate means what we were designed to eat as human beings. Do you know, when you think about it, many of us actually feed our pets better than we feed ourselves these days. It's shocking. We evolved as hunter-gatherers, probably, which means that we would have eaten an omnivorous diet. If you look at our teeth, you can see that we have teeth that are designed to grind, teeth that are designed to cut, and teeth that are designed to tear. So that covers everything. That means that we can eat meats and fishes, but we can also eat the sorts of foods that need grinding, like vegetables, perhaps fruits, root vegetables maybe. We don't know for 100% sure, but we've got a pretty good idea. So that would be mainly meat and fish, ripe fruit and berries, honey, real honey, again, not the honey you buy in a supermarket, real honey that is not treated, that, you know, you can definitely vouch for was made by bees. As crazy as that sounds, again, not all honey is honey. So if it's real honey, it'll be expensive. Probably some green leafy vegetables. Again, there's discussion in the sort of nutritional health communities about this currently, but I still think that vegetables are an important part of a healthy diet. But it depends on you. And this is when there's no one size fits all in terms of how you should eat to feel the best you can feel. And I would say that sometimes it's really, really valuable to just forget all of the information and advice that you get online from people like me, and get back to the grassroots of learning to listen to your body and feel how you feel after eating certain types of foods, because what works really well for me might not necessarily work really well for you. I might be better on lots of green vegetables and you might find them harder to digest. So beans and leafy greens are hard for us to digest as human beings, and actually nature again designed them to be that way. They do tend to need cooking or processing in order for us to be able to digest them well. And just as an add-on, whole grain, which is banded around so much again by the food industry because they've used it to sell a lot of their products that they can have a massive markup on, huge, is that whole grain is a myth, pretty much invented by the food industry to sound healthy. We don't eat whole grains, we eat processed grains. So you might buy a bag of oats and feel like that's your whole grains, or you might have some brown bread or whole grain bread. It's highly unlikely that it's whole grain. It's made with flour. That's grain that's been processed to practically a powder. That's not unprocessed food. So here's a question that I've asked on your behalf. So why else? Why else would you want to eat a real food diet and keep away from the processed stuff? Because you know what? I don't really care about all that other stuff. So here are some other reasons. You might find if you can keep mainly away from those processed foods full of chemicals and additives and all of this stuff that, you know, we are not meant to be ingesting on a daily basis as human beings, and you focus on eating those foods which are stuffed with nutrients and goodness that help your body to work really well, you might find that you sleep better. You might find that you have more energy. You might notice that your appetite reduces. This is something that I see very, very commonly, and that your cravings either reduce or disappear completely. You might find that your mood improves. You won't need to count, weigh, or measure because your appetite will just regulate naturally. The fat around your middle that maybe you found getting more and more as you're getting a bit older, or you just can't shift, will reduce on its own without you having to worry about it. You might notice that your skin gets softer and firmer. that aches and pains that you've just been learning to put up with get better. You might find that that sort of foggy brain feeling that you have, you're not really as sharp as you used to be, lifts, and suddenly you feel so much better. For women, you might find that your PMT or perimenopausal symptoms really improve. And if you're a man boobs or gynecomastia, which is its proper name, has become a real issue for a lot of men. Now, it is a condition where men have breast tissue. And I'm not saying this lightly, but obesity, and actually, I'm going to go backwards from obesity. So a problem with metabolic health is actually the reason. It's one of the causes. Essentially, it's a hormone imbalance in men. So it's too much estrogen is one of the reasons. And too much estrogen is in no small part caused by eating foods that are stuffed with horrible man-made chemicals and eating too much sugar. Because sugar is a dose-dependent poison. This is a quote by Professor Lustig. And what he means by this is that sugar is okay, sugar is okay in small amounts occasionally, but that's not how we eat sugar today. We eat sugar today in an amount which is unheard of in our history as human beings. I'm just looking, I made a note of this. So this picture here is actually a picture of an exhibition which was put on in the United States. And it represents a 50,000 pound pile of sugar. And that amount of sugar is how much US kids eat every 5 months each. So each US child eats 50,000 pounds of sugar in 5 months. That's horrendous. So another great thing about choosing to eat real unprocessed foods is that actually you will automatically dramatically reduce your intake of sugar without even trying. You won't have to be judiciously reading every single label on every single drink or food that you buy, because you're not going to be buying those foods anymore. Type 2 diabetes. So type 2 diabetes is the end result of a lifetime of eating too much sugar and refined starches. And type 2 diabetes is effectively a dysregulation in your metabolic health. Again, if you go to my website, you can learn more about metabolic health, and there is a quiz there that you can take. So if you already have a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, it is possible to reverse this condition. You may not be able to reverse all the damage that has already been done to your body, but you can definitely stop causing any more. And the way you do that, you dramatically reduce the amount of sugar and refined starches that you eat. And how do you do that? By eating a real food, unprocessed diet. It's as simple as that. Because real food nourishes and heals, and that is what a plate of real food looks like. So I've got a question for you all. How would this look to you? I'd like you to take a little bit of time and maybe screenshot this, this slide and ask yourself, if you could get real and lasting resolution from many of the current symptoms that you have, and by that I mean anything from a little niggle that you kind of almost sort of don't notice anymore because you've been putting up with it for so long, to something which is really life-changing. What would you be able to do that you can't do now if you could get a lasting and real resolution from those symptoms? What would be easier to do? How would it change your life? So on to the question of why is it so hard? Well, one of the answers to that is because you are hooked. So it's not a mistake, it's not an accident that you are hooked on the sorts of foods which are super tasty and highly processed. They were designed to do that to you, and they do their job really well. Again, if you switch to eating real unprocessed foods, you will automatically stop eating those foods that you're hooked on. And this could well result in a little bit of a withdrawal for a while. But I can promise you that it won't last longer than a couple of weeks. And it's so worth it. There's another reason why this is so hard. None of your friends and family are doing this. You know, it makes you really different. You stick out. It's hard to do because our food environment, our society today is absolutely designed around eating convenience, hyperpalatable, fake, fast, super processed foods. So you will be swimming upstream with this. But trust me, I've seen this happen often too. You do this, people around you will watch the difference in you and see the difference in how you look. Your skin will shine brighter, you'll just have more energy, and over time they will want to know what you're doing that makes you feel so well. I see it time and time again. Number 3, in terms of reasons, you don't have time. Okay, so eating real food does take more time initially, but actually once you get used to it, once you get those sort of new things that you can grab and go from your fridge, and you get your head around the idea that you don't go out without any food, you will find it much easier. And the other thing I have to say that you will notice is when you start eating real, unprocessed food instead of the processed, hyperpalatable crap, you will find that actually you can go for much longer periods without eating. So you won't be in those situations where you haven't had anything to eat for 3 hours, you have a massive hypo, and you feel like you've got to eat because you feel dreadful, and you get shaky and you get hangry. That stops happening. You don't want to be a nuisance. So this is an issue for many of us. You know, you don't want to kind of have to ask for something different for you, and maybe you go to a barbecue or a big event and there's nothing that you can eat. Well, you either learn that you have the right to ask for what you need in order to be healthy and feel amazing, and you learn how to do that. So you ring ahead, or you plan, or you take your own food, and you just get stronger about it. You don't have to be aggressive or nasty. You can do it in a really nice, calm, gentle way, but you just ask for what you need. It's okay to do that. It's more expensive. Initially, it can feel like it's more expensive, but again, you know, there are ways you can make this not too expensive. You don't always have to buy the most expensive cuts of meat. You can buy cheaper cuts of meat and slow cook them, or casserole them. Get a crock pot or an instant pot, which is like an electric pressure cooker. And you'll find that you can make really, really tasty, especially in the winter, stews and, you know, things with cheaper cuts of meat. Don't waste food. So if you buy a chicken, make sure that you boil up the bones to make a bone broth, because that's, again, a lovely thing to have as a lunch, or you know, if you're hungry, a little kind of in-between meal drink is some really nicely seasoned chicken broth, or, you know, beef stock broth. And it's just another fad diet is another thing I hear. And this is definitely not a fad diet, because this is actually the way we have eaten as human beings for thousands of years. So if you turn that on its head, actually, the way that most of us are eating now, you know, living on you know, grains and other highly processed foods which have been stripped of all of their nutrients and are making us sick, that's the fad diet, not going back to eating a real unprocessed diet. But is it really worth it? Because, you know, it's a lot of work in the beginning, I'll be honest with you, and the initial changes feel hard. For the first 2 weeks to a month, it's going to feel hard, and you are going to know you're swimming upstream. But before you know it, it will become second nature. So here are some of the things that some of the people I've worked with have said about how they've experienced these changes. So I went to Mel because I was fed up with yo-yo dieting, and I couldn't seem to stick to anything for any length of time. Remember, we said this is not a diet. This is about a new way of eating for good. This is about a journey. So this person has said they're now fitter, thinner, more confident, and they've realized that, in fact, It wasn't that they had no willpower, it was the fact they were eating the wrong food. Okay, this person has found that actually they have a much better relationship with food now. You know, that the stress and the constant questioning and weighing and measuring is gone. It doesn't have to happen anymore. This person's now able to nourish themselves in a way that supports their lifestyle. So no more constant tiredness, white knuckling through the day, over exercising perhaps to keep your weight under control, and no more obsessing over food. This person found that they have more energy, they have less brain fog, they're sleeping better, they also lost weight, but actually that's not the focus, and that's never the focus for the people that I work with. It's about improving people's metabolic health with the specific group of people that I help, and you know, the other stuff comes behind, so it's health first. So how do you start making these changes? Okay, so here are 8 ways to start making these changes. Number 1, make the decision that this is something you want to do and start, and have your clear reasons for doing it written down. So when we were looking at the symptoms before, do you have any symptoms that you'd like to see an improvement in? Do you have a bad relationship with food currently? Would you like to improve that? Would you like to feel a bit freer from feeling like you have to eat every 2 hours, or you know, you get really hangry if you don't always have food with you? Would you like to know that you could go out for the day and not have to take food with you and you're going to be fine? Tell those people close to you that you're going to make a change, that you're going to be trying something new, and you would love their support. And if possible, and if they want to, involve them too. Have a kitchen audit. So go through your kitchen cupboards, get rid of anything with more than 5 ingredients. Have some recipe or food ideas ready, and I would recommend absolutely that you plan your meals for the first couple of weeks at least, just so that you're not caught short and that you are prepared, and that will make it feel so much easier. Eat mindfully and slowly. Now, by mindfully, I mean the complete opposite to how most of us eat most of the time. So have you ever found yourself standing with an empty packet of crisps or bar of chocolate, or you know, piece of toast, and you didn't really remember eating it that well? You know, before you know it was gone. You do remember eating it, but you know, you weren't really very present or conscious when you were eating it. So eating mindfully is about taking the time to stop and slow down and look at what you're eating, and not just look, but really see it. What color is it? What does it look like? What sort of shape is it? How are you feeling before you eat it? So because the digestive process starts way before you put food in your mouth. So next, think about what it smells like. Then when you start to eat it, notice how it feels in your mouth. Is it something that you actually still want to eat? One of the joys of eating mindfully is it helps with that, it helps get away from this sort of toxic diet mentality that a lot of us are stuck in and have been stuck in for years, because it's not about saying no, it's about you being back in charge of making your own healthier choices about food in a reasoned and conscious way. So see it, smell it, feel it in your mouth, really taste it, really chew it, eat it slowly. If it's something that you really want, doesn't matter what it was, eat it and savor every single mouthful. Don't buy anything with more than 5 ingredients, okay? So this is a great rule of 5 that I give everybody, is don't buy anything with more than 5 ingredients, and also check the label to see if it has less than 5 grams of sugar per 100 grams. That's another thing to go for, another thing that will help you massively if you're still buying food with some ingredients. To get curious, become a food detective, look at the ingredients. Do you know what they are? Are those ingredients something that you recognize, or are they really long words you've never even heard of? Google them, find out what they actually are. Is it something you'd have on your kitchen, in your kitchen cupboard if you were going to cook it? And if it isn't, why are you eating it? And lastly, find your tribe. Okay, so hooking into a community of people who are doing the same sort of things as you, people who've realized that actually they've made the connection between what you eat and drink on a daily basis and how you feel. Those people are the people that you want to start talking to, because those are the people who will support you through these difficult changes. And I have a free online community which you are all welcome to join. Again, the starting point, if any of you want to contact me or you have any more questions, is to go to my website, www.melmartinnutrition.com. And on there, you will see an option to sign up to my newsletter. Do that. You get a free cookbook when you do that. Take the quizzes. Read what I've written about metabolic health, about how it's not really about losing weight, it's about getting healthy first. Have a look through, see what you think, read the blogs, have a look at my Instagram posts, follow me on Instagram, and get as much information as we can. So in summary, let's just go back over what I hope that you've learnt in the last half an hour. You should have learnt what real food is and how not to be fooled by big food. You should learn why you should eat it and some of the benefits that you might notice and why it is so damn hard to do. It's not a willpower issue. And finally, how to start making these changes that will really improve your life. So thank you very much for giving me your time, and stay in touch. And I really hope to see you all next month at my next free webinar. Don't forget again to keep an eye on my Instagram post, and if you sign up to my newsletter, then you will work out or hear when my next webinar is. So thanks ever so much for listening today, and see you all soon. Bye-bye.